To be here.
Well, thank you. I think I'm going on my 20th year here.
Well, if I forget point 3, you come up and finish for me.
It's good to have you. Bring your
Thank
wife
you.
next year again.
Thank you. Thank you.
We were good to see her last year.
Thank you. She enjoyed
Our
it very
connections
much.
make powerful things happen, uniting individuals and communities. We are Rotary. We are people of action. And together, we turn great ideas into reality by accessing our networks, our experience, and the best of ourselves to make a difference. Around the world, Rotary brings leaders together to build new friendships and to solve problems. Like in Austria, where generations work side by side to come up with innovative ways to build sustainable housing and community centers. Everyone learning from each other. In India, volunteers run a mobile blood bank to help provide a steady blood supply for their local community. And in Taiwan, people are working hard to get vulnerable citizens the support and services they need. With over 1 million members, we know what people can do when they come together. In your backyard and around the world, there's power in our connections. Take action with us. Find out more at Rotary.org.
Please welcome to the podium this year's operating chair of Lone Star P.E.T.S, the 2013-2014 District Governor from 5810, Ian Sullivan.
Thank you. Welcome to the 33rd Annual Lone Star P.E.T.S Select Training Seminar, and good morning. Now, before introducing this next thing, I need to remind everyone that the Defense Authorization Act of 2009 contained an amendment authorizing veterans to render a hand salute during the passing of the U.S. flag and playing of the national anthem. So would you please stand as the Ross Volunteers of Texas A&M University present our colors. Now, I got to tell you some special things about our color guard today. This is the official color guard of the governor of the state of Texas. And both of the members of the color guard today are already members of the National Guard serving our armed forces. So please, yes, thank you. After they present the colors, please remain standing as we sing our national anthem, which will be led by Ryan Anderson, and recite our Pledge of Allegiance, led by District Governor-elect Steve Long from District 5730. And now, before we present the colors, I forgot, ring the bell. Color guard, present colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
The best yet. The best yet.
Join me as we pledge the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You may be seated. Now, please enjoy your meal, and I will, at the close of the meal, I will call us back to order. Thank you. Okay, those lights are.
Please welcome to the podium this year's operating chair of Lone Star Pets, the 2013-2014 District Governor for 5810, Ian Sullivan.
Thank you. District Governor-elect Peter Scott from District 5790 will offer our invocation for the meal that we just enjoyed.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for our many blessings. We ask that you guide us in our endeavor to service above self. Help guide our facilitators and participants throughout the weekend so that we all may serve more effectively. We ask for your blessing on our many Rotary projects, that they may bear the fruit of peace and better lives for those we seek to assist. May our service truly be beneficial to all. We reaffirm our commitment to the high ethics of our four-way test, and we give you thanks for all of the blessings, opportunities, and responsibilities that we enjoy as Rotarians. We ask that you bless our wonderful meal that we have enjoyed as Rotarians, and may it strengthen our bodies and minds so that we may accomplish our work together. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Peter. And now will you please welcome to the podium our Chief Ranger, Ryan Anderson from District 5790, who will introduce the outstanding group of Rangers that are serving us today. Ryan.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
That's good afternoon now. Sorry about that, everybody. Hope everybody's had a great morning. Hope everybody had a great day yesterday. Our Rangers, we have 2 from every district. There's a couple districts with a little bit more than that, but we've got a total of us. There's 20. Rangers are here, if you hadn't figured it out yet, to serve you. Any needs, lost and found. Anything you need, ask a Ranger. We've all got our yellow vests on. So let me go ahead and introduce them. If you will hold your applause until the end, and we can all give them a nice big round of applause. From District 5730, Sandra Witt. District 5730, Jack Fisher. 5770, Wes Hall. 5770, Mark Truitt. 5790, Colby Van Sickler. 5790, Hal Thorough. 5810, J.J. Nichols. 5810, J.D. Grimm. 5830, Paul Allen. 5840, Christy Vandenberg. 5840, Terry Politi. 5870, Manny Tamares. 5870, Debbie Tam. 5890, Larry Pittman. 5890, Nick Giannone. 5890, Alan Brevard. 5910, Berta Gaskin. 5910, Ernestine Belt. 5930, Dana Sisk. And 5930, Kathy Pretty. We as Rangers look forward to serving you the rest of the weekend. If we can help, let us know. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. And now let me introduce your head table. To your right, the invocation was led by Peter Scott, District Governor-elect from District 5790. And then sitting next to Peter is the better half of the duo of the Pinson duo, Mary Pinson, wife of Mike Pinson. And the facilitator that taught me how to be a president-elect many, many, many years ago, Mike Pinson, past Rotary International Director and trustee of Lone Star P.E.T.S. And Dr. Mouzon Biggs, who will be introduced more formally a little later. And then to your left, we have District Governor-elect Steve Long from District 5730. And Sandy, his wife, and I'm sure better half. The man that's going to give me singing lessons later, Ryan Anderson. And the reason that I'm in Rotary, because she told me I had to join a Rotary Club, my wife, Jan Sullivan. And I'm Ian Sullivan, the one that can't read in the correct order that it's written. Now, I would like to call on Mike Pinson to do the official introduction of our speaker, Mouzon. Mike?
You're in for a real treat. Mouzon has been coming to speak to our upcoming Rotarians. This is his 25th year to be here. Now, he's from Oklahoma, but he was born in Texas. He went to school in Texas. His boys went to school in Texas. So we know where his heart is. He is just retired as senior pastor at the Boston Avenue Methodist Church in Tulsa. He is, as I said, born in Carthage. He became a preacher at SMU, and he has had several churches in Texas. The last one before he moved off to Oklahoma was First Methodist Church, Houston, where he was what he calls me the night preacher, where he preached it in the evening. I'd never had a night preacher before, so I didn't know what he was talking about. I want you to take the time sometime during this time together to take out your programs and read the resume of this great man. It's very impressive. But you know, more impressive is what he's going to talk to us about today. I give you Mouzon Biggs.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. I look forward to getting to be with old friends year after year here. It's very, very special to me to get to fly down, spend this time with you before I go back to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Every year, when the new theme for our Rotary World is announced, the district secretary immediately emails me so that I've got a month or so to write an address. This new theme, I think, works really well for us. Rotary connects the world. As I started writing, I remembered what I had said to this group last year when our new theme was Be the Inspiration. I said the Rotarian who really introduced me to Rotary was past District Governor, past Zone Executive Don Strickland. When I first met Don, he was a banker in Liberty, Texas, and I was the Sunday night preacher at the First Methodist Church in Houston with the famed Dr. Charles L. Allen. He had told Don about me, and Don invited me to speak to his Rotary Club just at a weekly meeting in Liberty. After I had done that, he asked me, "Has anyone ever talked to you about being a Rotarian?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, I'm talking to you about being a Rotarian." The Rotary Club of Houston at that time was the largest in the world, and he said it meets right down the street from First Methodist Church at the Rice Hotel. I will see that you have an invitation to join that club. So I became a member of that club. A few months later, Don invited me to speak at a Rotary District conference in College Station. I was there in plenty of time. When it was time for us to march into the podium, Don noticed that I had not worn my Rotary pin. He didn't say anything to me. He simply took his pin off his lapel and put it on me. I made the address and drove back to Houston. A year or so later, he invited me to address a Zone Institute in New Orleans. I flew to New Orleans. Don met me at the airport, drove me to the hotel, and just before he and I went in to speak, he noticed that I'd forgotten my pen. He didn't berate me. He just took his off his lapel and pinned it on me. But I got the point. So I said to myself every night when I got home and was deciding which suit I was going to wear the next day and what tie might go with it, that was the time to transfer my Rotary pin from the coat I had just taken off to the one I was about to wear the next morning. All those years as a United Methodist minister, I wore a coat and tie 6 days a week, and I changed that pin 6 nights a week. So I got pretty familiar with my Rotary pin. I knew it was a gear. I grew up in the oil patch in Carthage, Texas. I started reading about how we came to have this as the symbol of Rotary International. Obviously, it's a gear. It has teeth on it so that the teeth from one can intermesh with the teeth from another and both of them can turn. But when engineers became a part of rotaries, they said this gear would never work. Because when you look at the small circle in the middle, it's smooth all the way around. If you had a drive shaft of some sort, the energy provider, it would just spin. You need a keyway. And as small as our pins are that fit on our lapels, they introduced a keyway into the design so that the drive shaft could appropriately lock into that centermost part, and when it provided energy, then the gear would turn. We Rotarians are not a religion. I support that. When I became a part of the Rotary Club in Houston, our president at the time was the esteemed Rabbi Robert I. Kahn. So you can be sure that all of our invocations were inclusive, as was the beautiful one today, excluded no one, and that our speakers would not espouse any particular religion nor any particular political party. I support that. When I moved to Beaumont, Texas, when my bishop sent me there, I was a member of their largest club, and we had several Jewish lawyers who saw to it that our invocations were always inclusive, and our speakers would be non-political and non-religious. I support that. When the Bishop of Oklahoma invited me to come to Oklahoma, almost 40 years ago now, I immediately became a part of our largest club in the downtown of Tulsa, and I discovered that their invocations were exclusive. I met several members of Temple Israel and Congregation B'nai Emunah who had to sit in Rotary week after week and hear themselves excluded from the prayers. So 5 years later, when I became the president, one of the things I said in my opening remarks was that we would have inclusive invocations during my year. A very prominent member of one of the other downtown churches wrote to all the past presidents of our club and said they should recall me for what I was asking to take place. And so all the past presidents got together and signed a letter back to him saying they supported me 100%. And for the last 33 years, our Rotary Club has had inclusive prayers. So I'm not saying that Rotary should be a religion or a political party. I'm supporting the fact that we are neither. But I also know that most of the Rotarians I've known believe in some higher power who created the heavens and the earth. Some years ago, Gail and I were on a bus tour through Scandinavia, and one morning, almost mid-morning, the guide announced on the bus, "We're going to have our coffee break this morning in Uppsala. There's a very nice coffee shop here. You'll have 30 minutes to get a pastry and a cup of coffee or hot tea." When I started off the bus, I asked her, "Where is Dag Hammarskjöld buried?" And she said, "Oh, we can't go there. The road into that cemetery is too winding and too narrow for this big motor coach. We can't go." And I asked, "Where is it?" And she said, "It's about a quarter mile." And I said, "I'll be back in 30 minutes. And I told my wife, I'm going to jog over to that cemetery and see if I can see the grave of Dag Hammarskjöld. When I was at Centenary College, working on my degree in history, taking the history of Western civilization, the history of Russia, taught by a husband and wife who had been professors at the University of Berlin and who lost their jobs because they were Jews when Adolf Hitler came to power. Dag Hammarskjöld was Secretary General of the United Nations. He was the youngest who had ever been chosen up to that point, and he was trying to hold the world together. These were the days of the Cold War. Within months, the Cuban Missile Crisis would occur. But on one day in 1964, he was on a small airplane on the way to the Congo trying to negotiate to avoid a civil war that would take thousands of lives when that small plane fell out of the skies. Some believed there had been a bomb on board, though they could never quite prove that in 1961. Dag Hammarskjöld's family, in going through his private things after his death, came across a diary. It wasn't a diary that said, I got up at 5 o'clock and shaved and showered and had, no, not that kind. The kind of diary that spoke from his heart after those long, hard days of trying to hold the world together. It was published under the title Markings. On one page, it said this: there came a time when I believed the one who had created the heavens and the earth knew me and wished me well. I got to the front gate of the cemetery and saw hundreds of graves. How was I ever going to find his grave? And then I saw a little old lady with a hoe trying to get weeds from around one of the headstones. I walked over to her and said, "Pardon me, could you help me?" I could tell the way she looked at me. She didn't have a clue what I had just asked her. And so I just said, Dag Hammarskjöld, Dag Hammarskjöld. And she got the idea. I would like to pray at his grave. And she walked me over to it. And I did pray to the one whom he had addressed in his book, his diary, and to the one whom I believe also knows me and wishes me well. And that one can turn the gear, I guarantee it. Number two, the second connectedness, of course, that we Rotarians have is in our own clubs. Now, all three of the clubs to which I've belonged through the years were members of the big clubs, and their presidents always get to go to the big clubs training for presidents. And every so often somebody suggests, you have to stir up your club and make everybody eat with everybody else. And our club tries that every so often. When you get your badge as you enter, they give you a table number and you're supposed to go to that table. It lasts until they quit handing out the table numbers, and then they go back to the table they want to eat. I have a group I eat with every Wednesday. I usually get there before the others. I'm a get there early kind of guy. And I sit at a round table right over this way from the speaker's stand, and I want to face the speaker without having to turn my chair, and also I take that seat on the far side of a round table of 8 facing the speaker's stand. And then my friends start arriving. 2 retired FBI guys sit at my table every week. One is a retired federal prosecutor. One is a Lutheran organist. One is the head of the St. Francis Hospital health program. One is the head of one of the largest funeral homes in our city. This is a strange group, these 8. But guess what? We've been through a lot together through the years. Almost 40 years for some of us. Sitting with the same 7. John died George died. Richard died. One of my FBI guys, friends, member of my church all those years, every summer would take a fishing trip with his 2 adult sons, one of those where you have to fly to Canada and then get on a really small plane with pontoons on it, land and fish from this isolated place for 10 days. But last year they had barely gotten there, were unpacking their gear when they heard a little airplane, and their plane had already gone back. And he said, as an FBI guy, I knew this was not good. The second little plane landed and told him that one of those sons' wives, who is a trial lawyer in Tulsa, was making an argument before the jury, suffered a massive heart attack, fell on the floor of the courtroom, and died. If you sit with the same people week after week, you get to celebrate some things, you get to grieve other things together. One of our guys has 2 sons. One of them is an attorney. He had a terrific opportunity to go with a big firm in Las Vegas. And the other applied for and got a very good job with Amazon out in Seattle. And Bill was sort of grieving, and I said to him, well, look at it this way. You don't have to go to soccer games. I'm not a big soccer fan. If you eat with the same people week after week, you start to hold each other accountable. Where were you last Wednesday? We missed you last Wednesday. Well, I had to, whatever. One of my favorite television programs is called Finding Your Roots on P.E.T.S. Professor Dr. Gates from Harvard has at his fingertips all these wonderfully talented people who can track down someone's roots for generations. And a few weeks ago, he had Sheryl Sandberg on his program. You know that name? You've seen her on television. Sheryl knew that she's a Jew, but she didn't really know that much about when her family came to the United States, nor just where they came from. But Dr. Gates and his team had found out. Her great-grandmother, great-grandfather lived in a little shtetl in Russia. Think Fiddler on the Roof. That's where Tevye and his family lived. A little shtetl, a tiny little village. But when Tevye complains about, I wish I were a rich man, the truth is he was. I mean, he had a cow. He had enough land for a farm. He had a cart and a milk route. Most had none of those. And Cheryl's great-grandmother, great-grandfather had none of those. All they had were the armies of the czars who would come riding through their shtetl village, ransacking, sometimes killing. So her great-grandfather decided to come to the United States of America. He didn't have enough for his wife and 3 little ones, but he promised he would send for them. He came to the United States. He had to work almost 3 years to have enough for her and the little ones to come, but they came. He had worked so hard, somehow contracted a disease in this country, and shortly after she and the children arrived, he died. Sheryl had no idea that those 3 little children were placed in an orphanage. But the mother put them there because she couldn't feed them. But she worked hard. And at the end of a year, she went and got the oldest. And at the end of the next year, she got the second one. At the end of the 3rd year, she got the 3rd one. It's all in the records from that orphanage. But by the time it got to Cheryl's generation, her parents could afford to send her to Harvard. She got a bachelor's degree. She got an MBA. She went to work for a new company called Google, and she did really well. And Facebook offered her much more to come over and join them, and she's the chief operating officer for Facebook. She started her family late because she was working so hard, and when she had two little ones under 10, her young husband suddenly had a heart attack and died. So on this program, Dr. Gates looked at her and said, "How are you coping?" And she said, "You need to have people around you who can help on your worst days. Some days I say to those closest to me, today I have no faith and I feel no hope or love. And one of them will say, then today, Cheryl, I'll have faith and hope and love for you. Tomorrow, I may need you to have them for me." The weekly meetings are supposed to help us connect, to connect genuinely with those around us, to be there on their best days and to be there on their hardest days. But we look beyond our local clubs, of course. I don't remember anything that was said by the commencement speaker when I was graduated from Centenary College. I don't remember anything that was said by the commencement speaker when I was graduated at SMU. But I was paying more attention when my two sons graduated SMU. I had been a Rotarian for some years by that time, and when our older son Trey was graduated from SMU, Jim Lara was the speaker. You remember the McNeil-Lara report on P.E.T.S? That Jim Lara. And he looked out at all of these bright young faces. Our son Trey was graduating with a degree in economics and had already been recruited by Chubb Insurance. He graduated Saturday, went to work for Chubb on Monday morning. And Jim Lara said to those bright-eyed young people, "I've been in Washington long enough that I can tell you that I have seen or know about every 10 commandment being broken. But the one that concerns me most is that one about lying. The people I've come to know in Washington lie all the time. They lie to others in Congress. They lie to their own constituents. I believe they lie even to themselves. And it concerns me deeply," he said all those years ago. "I believe that one is doing more harm to our United States of America than the other 9. And as I sat there, I said, Rotary has a 4-way test. And the very first question is it the truth? Is it the truth? Is there a group of people, not only in my club, but reaching more than 150 countries of the world, where people tell each other the truth? When our Jason was graduated from Southern Methodist, he'd already been admitted to medical school. His best buddy at SMU, Matt Morgan, had already been admitted to medical school. And the other grads were bright, capable. The speaker, Dr. Marion Wright Edelman. You know that name? Dr. Edelman, the daughter of an African-American Baptist preacher in the Carolinas. Her mother and father named her after Marian Anderson, the first great African American singer of some of the most famous arias from operas in some of the greatest opera houses of the world. This precious new baby they named Marion. But when she was only a teenager, her father was dying. And he said, Marion, no matter, don't give up on education. You must get an education. So she went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and was graduated. She spent a year at the Sorbonne in Paris. And then she was admitted to Yale Law School. Not only did she get her doctorate in jurisprudence, but she met a young man who would get his as well, and he would go on to become professor of law at Georgetown University. And she would found the Children's Defense Fund. She would become a legal advocate for children, believing that every child should get to grow up healthy, and every child should get to grow up safe, and every child should get to grow up beginning where others begin when they go to school. And she looked out at these bright, capable young men and women and said, but I want you to hear this sentence: service is the rent we pay. I said, that's what Rotary believes. Service above self. He or she profits most who serves the best. Who serves? You see, seeing a need connects us if we decide to address that need together. And sometimes focusing on the need helps us forget about all the ways that we're different. An example, my congregation in Tulsa had built several Habitats for Humanity. And I saw the difference it was making in the lives of my people who worked on those houses. One of my contractor members put the electrical systems in for free. Had a plumber contractor who put in the plumbing for free to those who were going to get to move into that beautiful new house. In Tulsa, I'd become very close friends with the two rabbis, Temple Israel, Congregation B'nai Amunah, and I said, how about if we build a habitat together? Half the carpenters, half the painters, Christian, half Jews. Jews, Gentiles. They said, why not? So we built a house together. And these groups had such great fun working together. Seeing this family handed the keys of this wonderful new house, we said, why don't we ask the people at the mosque to help us build a house? And we went over to the mosque and said to these Muslims, want to help build a house for Habitat? Sure. So on that one, a third of the workers were Christians, and a third of them were Jews, and a third of them were Muslims. And they all were thrilled when they saw the keys handed to this family who had had no house. One of the fellows in my Rotary Club is a past district judge. He's a big-time Mormon. Hey, Judge, how about the Mormons building a house with us? With whom? I said, well, we got Jews, we got Christians, we got Muslims. He said, we'd love it. And so those four faith communities came together to build a house. And I didn't hear of a single time when they were quarreling about how this one felt or worshiped about something else. They were just building a house for somebody who needed a house and handing them the keys. Think about the different people who've come together for this terribly long fight against polio. Gail and I were sitting at that international convention in Kansas City when old Dr. Sabin proposed it in 1985. "You can do this, Rotary," he said. He underestimated the cost a little. He said he thought 125 million would do it. We've spent over $1 billion, as you know. He thought it'd take 10 years. We've been at it more than 35. But now we have Bill and Melinda Gates helping us. I mean, would you ever have thought we could get Jane Goodall to say, "We're this close, we're just this close"? A perceived need that brought so many people together. I want to tell one more story. Some of you have heard me before and know the story, but I have a new chapter right at the end. Some years ago, my church sent a work team down to Guatemala. Half the team were to help build a new little Methodist church, and the other half were medical. Our younger son now, one of the physicians on that team, they were going to work in a local clinic in Guatemala. One of the ones on the construction team was a fellow named Bob Scroggs, a college graduate engineer. And he noticed as he worked each day helping build this little Methodist church that there were teenagers lugging 5-gallon buckets of water, and the water was filthy. And they were taking it to their little homes, and children were being bathed in it. Others were drinking it. It was being used to cook supper, and the kids lugging the water were not in school. He followed them late one afternoon and discovered they were dipping that water out of a little creek where he had seen cows defecating a few days before. And he came home at the end of that mission trip saying, "We got to do something about this." And I said, "Bob, Rotary's always looking for a great idea. You and I are both Rotarians. Let's talk to our board of directors." And we talked to our board of directors, and they decided they'd like to do something about that. Somebody said, "What do we need?" "Well, we need a truck with a drilling rig on the back of it." So we found a used one, and we had Rotarians who could scrape and paint and do the mechanics, and we got that truck looking really great. But who knows how to drill a water well? Somebody said, "You know, there's a Rotarian at this little town of Bristow. It's about 35 miles out of Tulsa. This fellow named Mickey, he just retired from drilling water wells for more than 35 years. Maybe we could get him to go with our team." Then they asked him, and he said, "Sure." So Mickey went with them to Guatemala, and they started drilling water wells. There's a 3-month window every year that works best. And they discovered they could drill a water well, set pipe, and a pump every 3 days. If they really worked hard, they could do a new well every 3 days. And the next year, they'd go back for that same 3-month period, and the next year. Oh, but I didn't tell you that just before all of that actually happened, the engineer who had first seen this need had been killed in a horrible accident. He never saw the realization of his dream. But every year, we would have a group from our club go down to Guatemala to see what was being done, to take pictures of these children as they pumped that clean water out of the ground for the first time, as mothers caught buckets of water to take home to bathe their kids and fix the evening meal. I only saw this fellow from Bristow a few times. He's at least a foot shorter than I am. He's square, Looks like he might have been a wrestler at some time. Our club celebrated its 100th birthday a few years ago. We had a beautiful book celebrating that 100-year history. And because of all that he had done in the water well project, somebody gave him one of those books about our club, because there was a chapter about this water well project. He was at our meeting one day, came over to my table, and asked me if I would sign his book. I said, absolutely. And I wrote him a paragraph, like we used to do in high school annuals. I said, Mickey, Bob Scroggs would have been thrilled to death to know that you have gone back to Guatemala year after year after year for 16 years and have seen the drilling and completion of more than 500 water wells. He would have been thrilled. I handed him the book. He thanked me very much and went to a different table. I didn't see him for 2 or 3 months. He lives 35 miles away. And then one day he was there. And he came over to the table where I was sitting before the program started and said, thank you for the kind words you wrote in my book. You know, I can't read, he said. I never learned to read nor write. I tried not to gasp. He said, but when I got home, I took it to my next door neighbor and he read it to me. And I loved it. He said, did you know through the years I've met young couples expecting babies who, when I went back the next year, would say, we had a little boy and we named him Mickey. 3 little boys running around Guatemala named Mickey for this guy who drilled their water well. Rotary can take a licensed, college-graduated engineer and connect him to a man who cannot read nor write to give a little girl in Guatemala a clean drink of water. I wish you well.
Well, Mouzon, you've done something that's kind of hard to do. That I'm speechless. You know, one of the jobs of the operating chair is to pick an appropriate gift to honor the speakers. And I found out that's a hard job. It's hard to come up with something that is meaningful, that won't just end up, in a box somewhere. You want to give something that will be meaningful, for the event itself. For somebody like you, somebody of your stature that has spoken before this group so many times, I know you've got a room full of plaques and boxes and bowls and all kinds of things that every one of them means something special, but at some point, you don't need it anymore. Today, you have inspired us. You've inspired us to become better Rotarians. You've given me a definition of Rotary that meshes perfectly with the way I feel about Rotary. So, and then your talk, you talked about polio. And that's really important to me. So what I came up with for a speaker's gift was I took the money that was in the budget for a speaker's gift, got an anonymous donor to match that money, and then asked the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to match it again, 2 for 1. And through the magic of that matching, it's now $1,000 for polio. So Mouzon, please accept this visual representation of the gift on your behalf as a Polio Hero Award. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I told Mouzon before we started that I have heard him speak probably 10 or 12 times, and I have loved every one of them. You have a way of capturing the spirit of the theme, and I really thank you. All right, some housekeeping announcements. First off, I would like to excuse the district governor-elects and the discussion leaders to go ahead and leave and get to prepare for your afternoon sessions. We'll give them a chance to get out before everybody else does so they can get to the room. The House of Friendship, I would like just to remind you that the vendors are eager for you to come see them. But there's one vendor that's free that I especially want you to make sure that you take advantage of. We arranged with the Rotary International to have the virtual reality booth. So I did this last night, and it gives you an opportunity to experience what it's like to administer the drops to save a child. In this case, it's in Africa. But do it by virtual reality. You actually see in 360 degrees and be able to see when that child, the child as they are being inoculated. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. Now, we moved it because a lot of people didn't know what it was, so we moved it outside of the House of Friendship, so it's just outside as you walk in close to the shelter box. Now, I remind you that all the Rangers, identified by their hats and their badges and their yellow vest, the Rangers are here to help you. They are here, any question that you might have, they are your first line of defense, or actually my line of defense, but they are an invaluable resource for you. All right. I now declare plenary session number 1 to be closed. Enjoy your afternoon. Yeah. No, he got to me.
Yeah. All right. I got to make sure Mouzon's on the way to the airport.
Yep. Uh-huh.